All right. Hi, everyone. It looks like a lot of you guys are already getting signed on. My name is Cecilia Mortar, and I'm the Director of Business Development and Programs at the Steamboat Springs Chamber. I just want to give you guys a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you have questions as they come up and you don't want to forget them, put them in the Q&A at any time. That also allows your questions to be anonymous, and I'll pull them up when we get to question times. Otherwise, the county is going to present first and have 20 minutes or so to present and 10 minutes for questions. Then the city will present and again, 20 minutes to present and about 10 minutes for questions. And if you have anything you'd like to just comment on, you can put that in the chat section. I want to thank you guys all for being here, and I want to thank our Business Education Series sponsors who make these events possible: Mountain Valley Bank, Northwest Data Services, UC Health, and Broward County. And then I want to introduce our incredible speakers today: the city manager, Tom Leeson, Councilor Gail Gary, Commissioner Angelica Salinas, and the assistant county manager, Melina Bricker. Thank you guys so much, and I will go ahead and let the county kick it off. Thanks.
Okay, thanks everyone. I'm going to share my screen and then Melina is going to start. So give me a second. How does that look, Cece?
We can see it perfect. Thanks.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Melina.
Thank you so much. So Melina Bricker, Assistant County Manager. We've got some positive stuff happening in the county, some challenges like everyone is experiencing, but also some really good things are happening. The first area we're going to look at is going to be projects and partnerships. There we go. Perfect. So this is a program I'm really, really excited about. There is and has been for, going on 2 years, the Rock County Sheriff's Office has been working pretty diligently to develop some structure for implementing a co-responder program. So also called a MERT, which is not a super catchy term to say or hear, but it's a mental health response team. And there are models of this all over the country, but there's quite a few really compelling ones in the state of Colorado as well. Co-responder, just high level overview, means that a clinician, a behavioral health clinician, is partnered with a designated officer. And this team does peak hour, basically they're partners for those peak hours of calls in which we've identified an increase in the number of calls and the severity regarding behavioral health concerns in the community. So the purpose of a co-response program is to divert individuals from levels of care that may not be appropriate or helpful to them. And so you can imagine this reduces the number of people who are inappropriately inserted, into the criminal justice system for behavioral health needs. It also helps support a continuity of care for individuals that tend to be higher utilizers of our local resources. So this could look like decreased ER visits when it's not a medical issue. It also looks like decreased response to call times for officers that recognize when they arrive on scene, oh, this might actually be more of a behavioral health thing. We can mobilize that co-response unit. They can get out there and they can make sure that that other officer or team is back on the road and able to provide services. So this program officially got funded, and so we did receive a grant to start and develop all of those policies and procedures and find a behavioral health provider in which we can contract for those services. And so all of that was approved. And so we also just got notified that we have continued funding through 2026 as well. So we're super excited. I think this is a huge community need. I think we all hear behavioral health, mental health, all the time. And so we are very, very hopeful that this is going to be an incredible asset to the community, particularly for our most vulnerable people. So another partnered project is actually with the city, and it is that childcare and worker housing project. And so still preliminary. However, the county is committed to $1 million in total specific to the childcare portion of this project. So this is meeting, again, that critical need. We do reside in a childcare desert. A lot of that is connected to just difficulty and affordability. And so the rate of pay for a lot of childcare workers is just so far below what is reasonable that affording housing becomes increasingly difficult. And so in order to kind of address this cyclical issue of no childcare because there's no workers and no workers because there's no childcare, this project is trying to hit both of those really critical elements of providing housing specifically for childcare workers that reside in the county. So this could be a childcare worker in any facility, by the way, would be eligible for these residences. The goal is to just increase the availability of childcare overall while still providing a tangible, childcare facility in the interim. So pretty excited, really, really happy to be part of the team, and frankly, really, really impressed with how this entire project has been managed and developed for quite a while. And so thank you also to the city for just being such great collaborators on this. The county's really excited to see where this goes. Okay, transportation. So I'm sure, as you can imagine, if you know Commissioner Macy's, she would be way more enthusiastic and bright and knowledgeable. And so I do want to just note that I am doing my best to convey her excitement, as well as just some factual updates. She did want to express that there are two distinct segments to the Mountain Rail projects. And so that first segment is really identified as critical to the community. And this is that commuter rail or passenger rail. And so this one is ideally going from Oak Creek, Steamboat Springs, Hayden Craig. Again, preliminary, but that would be segment one. Segment two is that ski train. And so this project is a lot lengthier. It's a lot more complex, but there are two distinct segments of that Mountain Rail project. The county has applied and been notified the portal was not functioning. And so all entities that applied are being asked to resubmit. So we are waiting on the resubmittal. The portal is still not open. And so this is an application for grant funding to the RTAP program. So that's the Rural Technical Assistance Program. The funding is requested to develop that the master plan for stations. Where would they go? What do municipalities need? What is the community saying? And how do we best plan all of these different stops? And so I do want to note that this application is complementary. So if other municipalities have applied to this program, we've been really, really mindful about making sure that we have complementary grant requests and not competing grant requests in this area. All right. So we've also been working on the Move US 40 Forward Safe Crossing. So this looks like advocacy, planning, stakeholder collaboration for a safe pedestrian crossing at US 40 and Brandon Circle. So anyone who's lives or drives through Steamboat 2, I'm sure it's not a mystery to you why families could be concerned about their kids trying to dash across Highway 40 where there's no safe crossing, particularly as there are two schools on either side of the highway. So we are absolutely prioritizing this. We applied for the Safe Routes to School application. We submitted that application, unfortunately was not funded. A positive to that, though, is that we got incredible information, qualitative and quantitative, from not only just the traffic counts and pedestrian counts, but also from the family survey that had a great response rate, particularly because it was a short window for people to respond. So from a data collection and analysis standpoint, that tells us families impacted by this are really, really, really strongly supportive of making sure that we prioritize this and their kids can get active commutes to and from school in a safe way. I did include just a little quote from the survey. One family mentioned some considerable concerns, including using a 4-foot culvert seasonally flooded for their kids, that it's pretty messy and revealing. However, we did get some good information that over 80% of people impacted in that area really, really want and need sidewalks and pathways, as well as you can see the other percentages there, noting some of the issues, such as speed along the route in general, and then just the amount of traffic, which you can imagine is seasonal and also dependent upon school scheduling. So a lot of good information there. We also still have 3 pending grants. And so we're working on submittal for the it's actually SS4A. It's not SSRA, that's my fault. And then we've also submitted some congressionally directed spending requests for the project, as well as the HSIP program, which is that Highway Safety Improvement Program. So stand by, we will hopefully get some positive response for those grant requests coming forward in the future. Okay, so a couple of updates on the Yampa Valley Regional Airport. So just relative to trends in service and safety, we have seen just a 12% increase over 2023. We did see fluctuation in winter travel demand, remained strong, as I'm sure we all know. We have included an LAX nonstop flight with United this summer. So that's going to expand mainline service from Denver, just gives a little bit more options. And Southwest is going to be maintaining their 5 times a week service. So these include, as you can see there, just daily flights mid-June to early August. Relative to sustainability and safety, there was installation of level 2 EV chargers in the public and staff lots, and just continued exploration of bird deterrent drones, which is probably the funniest 3 words I've said in succession. Bird deterrent drones are a real thing, and it's a pretty proactive approach they're taking at the airport, and it's exciting. For expansion planning, there's a considerable expansion underway. Phase 1, that design is complete. Really trying to focus on getting people in and out of the airport and maintaining some level of calm and just passenger experience that's positive. We are looking into funding requests from the TSA. That will just be primarily those baggage handling upgrades. And we were recently approved by the county commissioners for a loan application for a large chunk of the overall expansion project cost. The aviation business park includes an 8-hangar construction for phase 1. That construction is underway. And there's been a considerable number of state grants that have been secured. There were a couple of issues with some funding freezes when it came to FAA and other federal funds. My understanding is many of them have been unfrozen, at least the notification that they're unfrozen. So we will see what happens with that. And then just this summer, there's going to be a little bit of a rehab on Taxiway A. And so a lot of funding secured for terminal projects. I will say that the support from the NWCDC with some of those grant applications, as well as our grant administrator here on our side, it's been quite an effort to try and get this entire expansion project prioritized and funded. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Commissioner Salinas. I assume we're going to save questions for the end of both of us.
I think so. Yeah, I'll try and go quickly so that we have questions and the city can still go, but Melina and I are both available for questions after. So feel free to write them down and we'll get to them at the end. But yeah, thank you guys for having me today. As our region is facing big shifts, one thing remains really clear, and that's that local engagement and community partnerships like the county and the city and the chamber really matter more than ever. We know that business leaders like you guys here and community partners are part of the solution, so happy to give some updates. I'm going to start off with probably one of the most important things we're doing right now, and that is Xcel Energy and the PUC process. And so Routt County is at a really pivotal moment. As Xcel prepares to retire the Hayden Station, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to shape what comes next, not just for energy, but for our economy and our workforce and our identity as a region. And so Xcel Energy it will retire both Hayden units, which is going to have a lot of economic impacts. And I'm really trying to focus this on the economic side, since this is the chamber. But really, we are looking at 68 full-time Excel employees. This will also impact South Route and 20 Mile Mine, where about 100 full-time employees are employed. And then there's also an estimated 30 to 50 indirect jobs through different contracts. So, and we did all the math, and this was in a pilot article recently that we published, but that's approximately 200 local jobs with starting salaries between 75,000 and 95,000 plus benefits. And if you total all of that in gross wages, that's about 174 million plus to the local economy, which is a lot. And so there's going to be big tax implications. As you can see, the coal industry fuels key local services right now, making up 45.7% of the Hayden school districts. And then, think of all the special districts out there. And so this transition will affect schools, public safety, and much more. And so what are we doing about it? So we are in negotiations right now with Excel for a settlement that is hosted by the Public Utilities Commission, or PUC. And we are looking for public engagement. And so I have to stress that right now, the county commissioners, we are worried about a couple of things. One is that replacement revenue, jobs, and economy. And the next is what happens next, energy and environment wise. So we are really pushing for clean energy redevelopment that reflects our community values and really supports long-term economic resilience. We'd love for you to get involved. There is a public comment hearing in Hayden on May 1st. Information is in the Routt County newsletter, but also, again, we've tried to publish this as much as we can. Please let me know if you would like to come or want more information. On the 29th of April, we're also bringing in people during the Routt County Commissioner hearing to really educate people on that May 1st hearing. So if you want more information, please, please, please reach out. We would love as much community involvement from partner organizations and from individuals who are going to be affected, or who maybe just have some thoughts and want to get involved. So hop on our priority list right now. I'm going to pivot that to more environment and climate action. And so we know that climate action is one of the key priorities for Routt County and for the commissioners. So a couple of fun updates. Melina actually touched on our infrastructure with the airport, which is super exciting. Those EV charging stations were put in place due to a grant that we got through Charge Ahead Colorado. The Hayden solar project is moving forward, but we have had some grant challenges, and so we're retooling after missing a DOLA grant, but that's moving forward. We are also working to install heat pumps in the historic courthouse where I'm at right now, which will kind of be a pilot for building electrification for us. And then PDR, Purchase of Development Rights, is we actually had a presentation from the PDR board last month, and really that program is going strong. Applications are due in May, and we have over 60,000 acres conserved to date. And really all of the easements that we reviewed were in compliance, and it really shows a strong stewardship for conservation. So excited to continue to partner with various organizations for PDR. Pivoting to land use. So growth is happening in our community, and our responsibility as county commissioners is to really guide it in a way that protects what we love about this place while making room for what is next. And a couple of big updates since our last State of the County. So the Unified Development Code was adopted in June 2024 to align with the 2022 master plan. This was a really big undertaking by our planning department and staff, so I have to give them kudos. That this was after 18 plus months of public engagement led by, like I said, planning department and design workshop. The new code really streamlines and modernizes our zoning and our subdivision and our land use regulations. And we are still going through various amendments, as with a large document like the UDC. But we are excited to have that in place. It really provides consistency and clarity for neighborhoods and decision makers, and sets, aligns the code with the master plan goals. And then I'm going to quickly talk about the planning process, because I know that we are receiving, as county commissioners and county staff, lots of questions about items that are going through the planning process at the county right now, specifically with subdivisions, but not just with subdivisions. And so really, we're trying to put as much information as we can out on the planning process. So for many development applications, we act like judges as commissioners. And so everything that we do must happen publicly. And there are various phases from sketch to preliminary to final. And we would love to hear from you on these. We just would love to hear from you in the right way. And so you are welcome to check out the planning. I'll link it in the chat, but the planning department's website, submit comments, write letters. You can see what's on the docket, what's coming up when. And so just wanted to throw that in here because we are getting a lot of questions about the planning process. And then I'm going to shift to state and federal funding, which maybe we'll have the most questions on, I'm not sure. But as you know, there's a couple of things going on. First, the state is facing a $1.2 billion budgeting gap, which will have trickle-down effects on local governments and local economies. And in addition, we are dealing with a lot of federal administration changes where there's funding freezes or layoffs that are also affecting our county. And so about $38 million, 35% of Routt County's budget is made up of fixed state and federal sources. And we're also seeing, Forest Service cuts and the USFS visitor centers close, which I know that the chamber is very aware of. And so what does this mean, right? What does this mean for Routt County? What does this mean for our community as a whole? We're trying to connect those dots, right? We've got a lot of local providers that use things like Medicaid. And if Medicaid's cut at the federal level, will the state be able to backfill? Nonprofits and health programs are bracing for trickle-down impacts, and we're certainly hearing from a lot of those organizations at the county level. And so uncertainty definitely makes local planning harder and long-term resilience a little more complex. But we are working hard as your county staff and commissioners. We are actively advocating with local, state, and federal lawmakers through letters, phone calls, direct outreach. We're also collaborating with Colorado Counties Incorporated, CCI, and CCAT, which are our local advocacy arms across the state to push for policy solutions that really have that local lens on it. And we're continuing to advocate for public lands and our Forest Service employees. We are very closely monitoring the state budget proposals as that is not finalized as the legislative session is still in session. We are engaging with our local agencies and our local partners to really safeguard critical services from healthcare to wildfire mitigation. And we are really starting to look ahead to make sure we are protecting our local revenue streams and strengthening partnerships. So, and I'll add to this as well, that we are going to be closely working with our CDP and the chamber. I've already connected with a couple of people on local tariffs and the effects that those will have on our local manufacturers and producers. We are hearing some stories from businesses already about how that is affecting their planning or their businesses. And so if you have any stories, if you're a nonprofit and you have had funding cut, or if you're a business and you are reacting to tariffs, or if you are a healthcare provider and you have concerns about Medicaid, please reach out to us because we are collecting all of this information so that we can best advocate for Routt County and so that we can really provide concrete examples of how this is going to affect our community. And so with that, I will end what the county's presentation, hand it over to the city, and then, or unless CC, you want to take questions now or everything at the end?
We can take questions for the county now.
Okay.
We have one in already, and I'll remind everybody that is on. If you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A or the chat. The first question is, what is the plan for loss of property tax and special use tax, which the power plants / mine pay to the local school district? South Routt nearly shut down when Peabody Energy didn't make its tax payments.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and that is exactly what we are negotiating with Xcel right now. And so there will be a settlement, and what that is, is to be determined. And so it has to go through the PUC process. And Melina, feel free to chime in if you have anything to add, but Public Utilities Commission organizes this process. We have multiple studies and we are presenting our best case for what, like that is the replacement revenue for local taxing districts, special districts, school districts, the town of Hayden. And this is not the first time Xcel has gone through this. They're going through it in Pueblo. They've gone through it in Moffat County. And so, how are the school districts involved with that? So the school district is welcome to, any district is welcome to provide public comment and to attend the May 1st hearing and to really engage throughout the process. We are engaging with special districts and the town of Hayden, Matt Mendisco, town council, Mayor Banks are all involved in this process very closely as this is going to, affect Hayden and it also affects South Route as well. And I'm working with South Route Medical Center and other districts in South Route to advocate for that as well. Although South Route's tax revenue does not come from the coal mine, a lot of it does come from 20 Mile, which will be indirectly affected. So that's why we're not just looking at it through one lens of this is affecting Hayden, we're looking at it from a regional lens. Melina, anything to add?
Yeah, I think that was a fantastic summary. And that is, we're definitely keeping a firm and equitable eye on all needs. It's incredibly important. We're a community, right? So it's not one specific municipality or district that's going to be getting majority benefit, or what we're doing is ensuring that everyone is taken into account because my kiddos go to South Route, right? So we're thinking about this too. I think a lot of families are apprehensive and a little worried or a lot worried. And so we are definitely keeping that in mind because we're certainly living and working and going to school here too. So I appreciate the question, but yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And please reach out to me if you have any other questions. I can put my email in the chat, but if you have any other thoughts as well about the Xcel closure or want to get involved more, please reach out because it is a community effort and it's going to affect all of us.
Thank you, guys. There aren't any other questions right now, but we will have Melina and Angelica at the end of this. Angelica, I'll throw in one more question before you turn off your camera. But for either of you, are there any advocacy opportunities where business voices could make a difference in addition to just kind of letting you know too?
I guess it would depend on the topic. Certainly, if you have questions about state issues, you can always reach out to us or connect with Senator Roberts or Representative Lukens. Those are our state legislators. Anything at the federal level, we are in contact with Senator Bennett, Senator Hickenlooper, and Representative Negus's office pretty much on a weekly basis now. Sending them real concrete examples of what's happening. So you can also always directly reach out to any of those. But if you'd like help with that or coordination with that, please let us know. In addition, I think we've heard from a lot of nonprofits right now that are worried about funding freezes for different grants or different pass-through funds that they typically get, funds that might be frozen. And so reach out to your local nonprofits and ask how you can help them as well when it comes to volunteer or other efforts. That's not to say that other organizations like for-profit businesses are also not hurting or struggling. This is, there's a lot going on right now. And so please, if you want more information, like I said, I'm always happy to sit down and have a conversation with you. I'm happy to connect you to who you need to be connected to. But right now we are kind of waiting to see where that state budget lands and what those trickle-down impacts will be to local businesses and their employees. Certainly there will be effects to education, to childcare, to healthcare. And so we want to make sure that we can advocate for our local businesses in the best way possible. And if you want to be involved in that advocacy, please reach out.
Thank you, guys. Tom and Gail, I'll ask you guys to hop on now and start your presentation. Thanks. Tom, we're seeing the the notes side of the presentation.
Okay. Let's get
And if you can
to-
turn your camera back on whenever you're ready.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop sharing this. And let's see if I can do it without the notes page, because every time I do it worked for the first time.
If you duplicate your screen, it should work once you put it in presentation mode.
Yeah, let me get let me get this back here. Hold on. How's that?
It stopped sharing. There we go. Thank
Okay.
you.
You bet. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom Leeson, city manager, and I'm glad to be here. I've been on the job for a month. So I am going to share a little bit about kind of my philosophy and then some trend lines that we're seeing with the city of Steamboat Springs. It's affecting and the impetus for some of the decision making that city council is making. And then I would also like to then President Gary will then share kind of some of the goals that city council has and the status of those goals. So let's see if I can advance this. So I'm a strong advocate of creating very, very strong visions and having clarity for the visions for the city employees. I think it's really critical that everybody understands kind of where the city of Steamboat Springs is headed as an employee. So having clarity of vision and then really being intentional about creating systems to implement that vision. So we're working hard. We have partnered with the Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence to advance performance excellence efforts following the National Baldrige framework for performance excellence. So internally, we're working really hard on creating systems to make sure that we're doing things efficiently and making sure that we're being intentional to ensure that we're achieving that vision. And then it's also important from an implementation standpoint that we really look at how we align our resources. So looking at our budget process and perhaps making some changes to our budget process to make sure that the resources are actually going to the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. All of this is based on our vision, mission, and values. It's very important that we have a strong organizational culture, and that starts with our vision and our mission. These were created, I think, about 2 years ago by the city employees, and it was really important that that happened sort of at the ground level. So everyone has alignment and is bought into what is our vision, who we are, and what is it we're trying to achieve. And our organizational values are critical, and we talk about these daily. And the employees are really bought into it, and it's really important, and it starts with service. We are dedicated to serving the community, and I think that's really a critical component of who we are and those that are trying to join our organization. The strategic plan is also a really, really important element because, as I said, trying to be intentional in terms of where you're headed is important that we have a strategy to do that. Our strategic plan is based on 6 outcomes that you can see up here. We did this about a couple of years ago, doing it internally. We are going in the process now of updating the strategic plan. So the planning process will be to work on this year and have it actually adopted in 26 by the new city council, so that the new city council can feel like that they have some buy-in and have their fingerprints on the new strategic plan, and then that would be resourced in 27. We are going to be doing this every 2 years. So it's on a 2-year cycle on the council election cycle. We learned a lot the first time we did it. And we're going to have an updated strategic plan that has fewer objectives, kind of reformatted so it's more clear. and then adding performance metrics so we can really be clear and understand if we're moving the needle and achieving the objectives. So to me, if you have a great culture and you have a great strategy, that's really the sweet spot. That's where you get results. You've heard the statement that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I disagree. I think you have to have both. And if you can have both in an organization, that's really where you'll achieve results. I wanted to just touch on a little bit the common theme that you are hearing and we are hearing in the city is that we, as we continue to grow, as we continue to change as an organization and as a community, we are seeing increasing community demands. And the staffing required to provide service to our growing population, as well as the inflationary costs, are really putting pressure on our city resources. And I just wanted to share some of the themes that we're seeing. In every aspect of the city operations, these trend lines are the same. We are seeing an increase in building permits and development applications. We are seeing an increase in code enforcement cases as we just grow and become busier as a city. We are seeing an increase in a stress on our parks and open space. This is particularly parks, but as you can see, we saw a great big huge jump during the pandemic and it continues to rise. EMS calls, same trend line, 12-month rolling total call volume, as well as the concurrent call volume. The concurrent call volume is the one that the fire and EMS is most concerned about. That's when there's more than one call at a time and their resources are really, really stretched. Wastewater treatment plant. So I bring these up because I could continue to talk about these trend lines in pretty much every city operation and every division. And here's sort of a telling that sort of a chart that sort of describes it. The orange line is our sales tax. So if we hear this comment that, well, your demand for services has increased, but so is your sales tax. And that is true. As you can see here, a great big huge jump in sales tax in 2021. And we are seeing that starting to flatten out. You've seen some of the sales tax reports already from this year that we're already down. So this number is already starting to go down, and yet our costs are going to continue to rise. So this is why you're hearing City Council talk about the need for a sustainable funding source and additional funding sources, because as we see a demand increase and the level of service desire of the residents and visitors are increasing, the resource and the funding mechanism, there's a disconnect. And so our resources are really, really stretched. And that's just sort of a trend line that I wanted to share and try to start to tell the story of why City Council continues to talk about the need for looking at additional revenues. So I will turn it over to President Gary to kind of go through the council goals and give us some updates on where we are with those goals.
All right, thank you, Tom. And again, I just want to say thank you to CC and the Chamber for the opportunity for us to be here today to, talk about city operations, as well as Tom just mentioned, to talk about City Council goals and to provide kind of our progress on those goals. As a city council, typically each city council sets goals. Each new city council sets goals for the upcoming 2-year term, and then throughout that 2-year period, we have retreats where we look at the goals, we look at our progress, and we refine those goals as appropriate. This council's top priorities are housing, transportation and mobility, fiscal sustainability, as well as environmental sustainability. As it relates to affordable and attainable housing, there are a number of different initiatives that are underway. With the failed annexation of Brown Ranch, Council has intentionally taken a pause. We have contracted with the Community Builders. That's a nonprofit organization out of Glenwood Springs. They're going to assist with the community and stakeholder engagement process to determine if there is community support to move forward. And if so, what does that look like? The first deliverable was a situation analysis of the prior efforts, and that really was to be used as a learning tool for how we go forward. We did receive an update this week on the next phase, which includes the creation of a deliberation and stewardship team. which is really where the work is going to begin. This team is comprised of 40 different community members of different demographics, bringing to the table different positions, different lived experience, as well as different positions on Brown Ranch. And they are really tasked with examining through kind of a shared learning process needs, right? What's the problem? Opportunity, what's possible, trade-offs, what do we need to balance? Principles, how should we approach this, the solutions, and goals? How do we define success? Also looking at potential strategies and what the options are. This first phase of the process is expected to run through August. The next phase, which looks at kind of what strategies create the best solution, is really targeted to begin in September and run through March 2026. And again, while a lot of the focus has been on Brown Ranch, Council has continued to look at shorter term options, which are included in the adopted housing strategy and action plan that was adopted by Council. One of those strategies is inclusionary zoning and linkage fees, which can be either incentives or they can be mandates for affordable housing with any new development. These can be in the form of dedicated units or a fee in lieu. And the results of that study will be presented to Council later this summer. Council also provided a $2.6 million loan from the STR funds to the developer of Riverside for 11 deed restricted units at 80% AMI. And then currently under construction is a 16-bedroom dormitory style seasonal employee housing project, which is behind the transit center. And this is on track for completion by the fall. Our next goal is transportation and mobility. And again, looking at transportation and mobility with the overall goal really is to reduce congestion, traffic congestion, as well as to provide safe modes of transportation. The city is working jointly and collaborative with the county, as well as with our neighboring communities and Craig, to form a regional transportation authority. And that's a public entity which is formed by 2 or more local governments. The RTA will be governed by a board of appointed elected officials representing the members of each of the governments, and it must be approved by local voters. We're in the process of each of the jurisdictions formally adopting the IGA. And again, that's a legal document that establishes the governance and the authority of the RTA to finance, implement, as well as operate a regional public multimodal transportation system. Council will have our second hearing and reading of the ordinance establishing the RTA at our meeting next week. Extending the Core Trail West continues to be a top priority for Council. This is a 3-phased project. The first phase extends the Core Trail from Snowbowl to Sleepy Bear. City staff is currently working to acquire the necessary easements from Snowbowl and from KOA so that construction can begin this fall. Council has also prioritized multimodal transportation option over cars, as well as adding bus routes, bike lanes, and expanding sidewalks. And again, these are all strategies to reduce vehicle miles traveled and the traffic congestion that we're facing. As Tom mentioned, we're moving on to fiscal sustainability. And as you saw in the operation slides that he presented, the city continues to see an increase in the service demands, while at the same time, we are seeing increased cost and the slowing of the sales tax revenue. To meet those needs, Council has a goal to explore ways to provide more sustainable funding from diversified funding sources. Currently stormwater capital projects are funded out of the Capital Improvement Fund, as well as stormwater operations, as well as maintenance efforts are funded out of the general fund. The city is studying the feasibility of establishing a stormwater utility, which would provide a dedicated funding source for the maintenance, operations, and capital infrastructure needs. As a council, we also are exploring a tax on vacant homes, as well as a lift tax as additional ways to diversify the city's revenue base. Vacant homes still require city services. The snow plows still plow the street, even, whether the houses are occupied or whether they're vacant. City staff also needs to make sure that we have staffing at the police and fire personnel so that they can provide a level of service to all the homes, again, in the community, whether they are occupied or whether they're not. And since, again, there's no one living in a home full-time, the owners are either not paying sales tax or they're paying a de minimis amount when they aren't in town, and they're not contributing, you know, at a level that's of a full-time resident. So the goal of the vacancy tax is to fill that gap. You know, our community and Ski Corps are interdependent. Our community benefits from having a world-class ski destination, you know, not only as a great place to ski and recreate, but also from the restaurants and the amenities that a community of our size, you know, would otherwise not have. The city also, you know, benefits from the sales tax revenue that's generated from the visitors. And Ski Corps couldn't operate without the workers who call Steamboat Springs home, or the city services that support their operations. So council has set a goal to explore a lift tax that could be used to fund, you know, city services such as local transit. You know, a local transit system and a robust local transit system is also, you know, a key to the success of the RTA. If people aren't able to get where they need to go once they're in town, you know, then it's doubtful that they will use the RTA to get to town. So council is currently in negotiations with Ski Corps, but is also pursuing a parallel path to bring this to the voters in November. I want to stress, you know, that no decisions have been made as to how the funding will be based, or the amount of the lift tax, or, you know, or the vacant homes, or, you know, how it's going to be used. If you want to stay kind of up to date on those conversations and those topics, again, we are going to be revisiting this at our work session on May 13th. And again, we'll be discussing the tax on the vacant homes as well as the lift tax. And so, you know, as with any business, the city also needs to take a look at its expenses relative to the level of service that's being provided to ensure that it's operating as efficiently as possible, as well as staffing at appropriate levels. And then kind of moving on to our final priority, which is environmental sustainability. Staff is creating internal policies that enable the city to operationalize the climate action plan. This includes adopting city electric vehicle policy, as well as integrating EVs into the city's fleet. The city is also conducting a facilities master plan and a decarbonization plan, which includes a facilities conditions assessment, as well as an energy and water audit of the city buildings, as well as benchmarking. The plan, you know, will also assess the feasibility of solar for each one of the buildings and create a decarbonization plan. Water conservation is also a major focus and is included in the facilities master plan. The effort to conserve water also has a number of different co-benefits, reducing energy consumed in water production, distribution, and wastewater treatment, and, you know, protecting the health of the Yampa River. The current water conservation plan sets a goal to reduce treated water demand by 10% over 10 years, and to reduce, you know, what we call non-revenue water losses by 10% by 2027. The non-revenue water losses are things like breaks in or leaks in the water main, and or result in inaccurate water meter readings. Another component of water conservation really is updating the city's landscaping code in the community development code. Think less grass and kind of more resilient native plants. The Parks and Rec Department is also deploying smart irrigation technology across all of the various different city parks. This system monitors the soil's water content so that watering only occurs when it's needed. And with that, again, I just want to thank you all for taking your time to attend today's webinar. And we're certainly open to any sort of questions you have. And again, like Commissioner Salinas, we are always available and welcome your input at any time. So please never hesitate to either email or call us.
Thank you, Jill and Tom. There is one question already in, and I'll encourage the rest of you guys to put them in the chat or the Q&A while this is being answered. Recently, the designated hotel shuttle drop-off and pickup locations were removed, and the SSPD has begun issuing tickets to hotel shuttles that stop in those previously allowed areas. Given the value that shuttle services provide, such as reducing parking congestion, limiting DUI incidents, and promoting lower fuel usage, what is the city's plan to support hotel shuttle operations moving forward?
Well, That is a great question. And part of, there's two efforts, as many of you know. One is the sort of redevelopment of the Gondola Transit Center. So we're working closely with Steamboat Ski and Resort Corporation to try to relook at that and reconfigure that to make that more efficient. Part of that effort, but as an independent effort, is a look at the feasibility of a consolidated shuttle plan. And so we have consultants looking at what would it take to basically consolidate all of the shuttles that we have so that each individual, hotel or resort does not have to provide their own shuttles, and that they would all sort of pay into one consolidated shuttle system to try to make it more efficient. We've heard several times that folks would love to get out of the transportation business. They're not in the transportation business. They're in the, residential market and don't want to be having to shuttle everybody around. So I think this is a potential for a win-win. Is complicated, but the first step is underway with the feasibility to see if that works.
And, Cece, I may just ask for a little bit of clarification. I'm thinking, Joey, you may also be talking about, I think we've heard a little bit from downtown and maybe some of the shuttle stops downtown. And so that would, I think, yes, kind of the downtown shuttle stops. And so I think that, and Tom, unless you, I think has been brought up, but I'm not sure that we've gotten kind of any sort of clarity in terms of the answer to that, unless you know.
I don't know. I'll have to look into that. And I appreciate the question. So we'll look into that and try to get an understanding of why those were closed, because I'm not aware of why those were shut down. So.
Yep. So we can get back to you, CC, on that. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Gail. I'll ask one question from the chamber perspective as we wait for others, but since you guys do collect feedback from locals, have you heard any feedback on the local tariffs? And if so, what is that? Not the local tariffs, the tariffs, but from our local businesses.
I can take that one.
Hmm.
Okay, so I have been working with a lot of local businesses and also our CDP on kind of gathering information on this. And we've actually heard from probably at this point 5 or 6 local businesses who have emailed us directly, or who reached out directly or talked to us directly about the impacts. I think I'll just preface this that right now there's like this pending sense of uncertainty when it comes to tariffs. There is a lot of years in advance planning that comes towards importing goods. And so the costs associated with tariff themselves is one piece. Then there's increased operational expenses, the uncertainty with planning. And then there's the, inevitably that tariff will be passed down to the consumer. And so from a business perspective, I think these are all things that we are tracking and that we are thinking about. In addition, just rising costs. I think I have a statistic that says lumber prices are now, 17.5% higher than they were last year. So let's think building costs and things like that. Ultimately, businesses are going to be forced to make tough decisions, right? They can absorb some of those tariffs, but certainly not all of them. And so they're going to need to weigh how much of that tariff to pass down to the consumer, which then ultimately affects all of us in our local economy. And when we are already, expecting cuts to things like Medicaid and essential services or essential, things, then when we are looking at supporting local businesses, do we have that discretionary funds if those costs are increased? And so I think that there is definitely effects that we are tracking. I pulled up an email right now from one of the local businesses who I won't name, but who certainly emailed us, and they said, we will do everything in our power to soften the blow to buyers, but the trickle down effect on the consumer will be devastating to them and devastating on us to have to pass those costs on. So these are things that businesses are certainly already thinking about. Another business told me just 2 days ago that they had freight on its way in a container coming over, and that they were advised to pay money to send it back so that they didn't have to pay the tariffs. They didn't know what those tariffs would be when it hit the port. So these are certainly happening to local Routt County businesses. It's things that we're tracking, and I think the chamber will certainly be involved in this process, and as we continue to really figure out how to best support the local economy and businesses through these federal administration decisions.
Thank you. We have another one. We have opened up several multifamily affordable condos and apartments all over town. Why isn't this housing influx putting a dent in our affordable housing problems? Is it a problem with what is affordable to most people?
Happy to take this as I sit on the Housing Authority Board, or Gail or Tom jump in as well. When you say we have opened up, do you mean like your business, or Routt County has opened up? Or the Housing Authority has opened up? I'm not sure what you mean by we. I think certainly we have opened a lot of affordable housing units, Steamboat especially. Okay, yeah, so probably the Housing Authority then, you know, opening things within Steamboat Springs. There's a lot of issues of why this isn't happening, right? There is economic mobility issues. So there's affordability issues. There's, you know, we're missing that missing middle a lot of times. And so there's a lot of people locally who don't qualify for low income housing through their AMI, but also can't afford the starting price in Steamboat for a single family home is, you know, I think 1.4 million now. And so you don't qualify for low income housing, but you also can't afford to buy a $1.4 million house. And so how are we targeting those people? You do that in a lot of ways by creating that economic mobility so people can buy and then move up. But that's getting harder and harder. And so there is still a need for housing close to transportation, close to where jobs are. These are all things that we are looking at from a housing authority lens. And then the type of housing is also key, right? If I, you know, like you said, we've opened many affordable condos and apartments, but what happens when I get married and want to have kids and I want a yard and a dog, and now I have 2 kids and I don't fit in my condo anymore. So that's the workforce that we are losing, right? Once I decide that I want to have, you know, get married and have a family and buy my place, I either have to, you know, figure out how to make that work in a very small condo here, or I leave the community, right? And so I think there's a lot of, issues that really go into that question. It's a great question. I'll let Gail or Tom, if you have anything to add, please jump in. But I think I covered a lot of topics there.
You did, and thank you. I mean, I think you touched on a lot of different things. I think one of the other issues has to do with just, you know, what is affordable, right? And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing too, in terms of our local wages are not really keeping up with what is termed the average median income is in our community, because we have a lot of wealth that's moving, you know, kind of into the community. So that also, you know, creates a gap in terms of what's available for our local workforce. And that's certainly, you know, again, why council has housing as one of our top priorities. And again, why we are looking at inclusionary zoning or linkage fees, so that in terms of any sort of development that's happening, we're including in that workforce attainable housing. So again, just trying to look for all sorts of different strategies to increase that the number of actual units that are available.
Somebody responded with raise AMI.
Actually, yeah, I think it's actually looking at it differently, right? In terms of in terms of the average median income, and depending on what you mean by that, certainly it's about kind of just recalibrating it so that it is our median income in the community is more in line with what somebody who actually works in this community makes, versus the remote worker or somebody moves in with other income.
Yeah, and I think AMI just is on a big picture, high level, right? It's calculated, you know, we look at people's tax returns, you look at housing, like you look at HUD and all of those things. And so when you calculate AMI for a region, you're not just looking at people who live and work here. Someone can live here but work remotely and be making more money. And that's also contributing to what that AMI is. And so it's not something that we necessarily set. It's based on a lot of different factors. So we can't just raise AMI. It's kind of how it's set. But we can certainly make adjustments to the housing that we offer and the AMI ranges.
All right, well, we are coming up on time. I'll give one last chance for people to put in questions. And in that meantime, I'll put in a plug for 2 other events coming up. On May 9th, we have the Economic Summit, and our keynote is Justin Farrell, the author of Billionaire Wilderness. So a lot of these conversations that we're talking about workforce and affordability for the people that like are running our businesses, will help contribute to that conversation. And then also on May 22nd, we have another business education series. So this is free to all chamber members too, and it's the employment law update. So we will look at the legislative session, bring in somebody from the Employers Council, and just really dive into things that you guys might need to be putting into your employee manuals or policy changes. And there will be samples and everything you will need to move forward. So thank you everyone for coming. Gail, Tom, and Halak and Melina, I appreciate you guys being here. Everyone else will send out the recording. And if you have additional questions, I know you can either reach out to them directly, or if you would like to go through me, I'm also happy to be the middleman in that. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.